The third time it happened that week was the moment something inside me snapped. It was 6:30 a.m., just after sunrise, the kind of quiet Texas morning where the air still feels cool and the world hasn't started asking for anything yet. I stood at my kitchen window with a chipped mug of coffee warming my hands, watching the mist lift off our pasture. Emily had planted bluebonnets along the drive the year we bought this place. She said the color made her feel like she could breathe easier. Then the silence shattered. An engine roared, tires spun, and a white Lexus exploded through my ranch gate like it was made of paper. Wood splintered. Metal screamed. Gravel sprayed. The sound punched straight through my chest. I watched, frozen, as the SUV tore down my private drive like it was a public road, crushing the bluebonnets Emily planted during chemo, flattening weeks of careful tending in seconds. The driver didn't slow. Didn't even hesitate. Cattle scattered in every direction. Atlas, my prize Angus bull, bolted so hard he nearly took out a fence line. On the porch, Emily's oxygen concentrator sputtered and died when the extension cord snapped under the flying debris. Still, the Lexus didn't stop. That was Linda Carver, HOA president. Cedar Ridge Estates. White Lexus GX. Vanity plate that said, blessed. Stickers that read live laugh love like threats. She blew past my house without so much as a glance, disappearing toward the subdivision like she owned the land beneath her tires. I set the coffee down before my hands dropped it. Emily was already outside when I reached the porch, pale, shaking, clutching her portable oxygen tank like a life preserver. She did it again, she whispered. I nodded. My jaw was locked so tight my teeth hurt. That was the morning I decided it would be the last time. My name's Jack Holloway. I'm 58 years old. I retired 5 years ago after nearly 3 decades in the Marine Corps. I wasn't infantry. I wasn't kicking down doors. I specialized in hydraulic systems aboard aircraft carriers, complex machines where failure meant fire, loss of life, or both. When things break, I fix them. When systems fail, I study why. And when someone threatens what I'm sworn to protect, I don't forget. Now, I run cattle and take care of my wife. Emily is fighting stage 3 breast cancer. We bought this ranch, 200 acres of rolling pasture in East Texas, right after her diagnosis. Doctors told us stress was the enemy. So we ran toward quiet. Toward land. Toward a place where the loudest sound would be wind in the grass and monarch wings brushing past wildflowers. Emily fell in love with the idea of a butterfly sanctuary. Native plants. Milkweed. Zinnias. Cosmos. On good days between chemo sessions, she'd sit on the wraparound porch, oxygen humming softly beside her, watching monarchs drift through the air like living prayers. This place wasn't just land. It was survival. Our ranch sits about 2 miles outside city limits, surrounded by open pasture, except for one pocket of manicured perfection called Cedar Ridge Estates. 200 homes. Beige stucco. Red tile roofs. Identical forest green mailboxes. An HOA that fined people for trash cans being visible for more than 6 minutes. And Linda Carver ran it like a kingdom. Our trouble started 3 months earlier. I was checking fence posts near the creek when I heard an engine that didn't belong. Too smooth. Too clean. I followed the sound and found Linda standing at my gate with a tape measure. She was wearing a navy business suit and heels that sank into the dirt with every step. This is private property, I said calmly. You need to use the public access road. She didn't even look up. There's a historical right-of-way, she said. I've been using this road since before you moved here. Ma'am, I said, there isn't. She smiled at me then. Cold. Practiced. Deal with it. She climbed onto an ATV parked beside her Lexus and tore off, leaving ruts through Emily's gravel path like scars. I'd dealt with roadside bombs overseas. Drunk sailors. Mechanical failures at sea that could kill hundreds. None of that prepared me for entitlement. When I got back to the house, Emily was watching a monarch cling to a honeysuckle vine. "Who was that?" she asked softly. "Nobody important," I lied. But my hands were shaking. After that, Linda escalated. ATV became SUV. Once a day turned into every morning at exactly 7:15. The Lexus roared through my gate like clockwork, dust rolling past the porch, cattle scattering, Emily flinching every time she heard the engine. Atlas injured himself trying to escape one morning, tore his leg on barbed wire. $800 in vet bills and weeks of recovery. Emily stopped sitting outside during treatments. "I feel like we're being watched," she told me one night, eyes wet. "Like this isn't ours anymore." That was the moment I made myself a promise. Her sanctuary would stay sacred. No matter what it cost me. 3 weeks in, Linda decided to make it public. Every Tuesday became what she called HOA Inspection Day. 5 vehicles. A dozen people. Marching through my ranch like tourists in khakis and polo shirts. They opened gates. Left them open. Took photos. Measured fence posts. I watched from the kitchen as Linda stood in the middle of Emily's butterfly garden, clipboard in hand, crushing Indian paintbrush beneath designer boots. "This would be perfect for a community gazebo," she said, loud enough for me to hear through the window. Emily turned away. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay beside her listening to the oxygen concentrator cycle on and off, staring at the ceiling, realizing something important. This wasn't about water pumps. This wasn't about access. This was about control. And control is a system. Which means it has weaknesses. By morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The first thing the Marines taught me wasn't how to shoot. It was how to observe. If something keeps happening, it's not random. It's a pattern. And patterns always tell the truth, even when people don't. By the start of the 4th week, Linda Carver's Lexus had become part of our morning routine, like sunrise, coffee, and dread. Every weekday at 7:15 a.m. sharp, that engine note would cut through the pasture. Too precise to be coincidence. Too confident to be innocent. Emily started timing it without meaning to. 2 minutes early today, she murmured one morning, fingers tight around her oxygen tubing. That was when I realized this wasn't just harassment. It was ritual. The cattle knew it before I did. Atlas would tense up the moment the sound echoed across the fields. Heads up. Ears back. Muscles ready to bolt. Animals don't understand legal threats or HOA authority, but they know danger when it repeats. And Linda repeated herself every single day. The Tuesday inspections got worse. She started bringing more people. HOA board members. Friends. Curious residents who wanted to see real ranch life. I watched them park wherever they pleased, wander through feed areas, leave gates open like they were strolling through a park. One woman tried to pet a calf. I intervened before someone lost a hand. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Holloway," a man said nervously, "this is Paul Jensen, HOA treasurer. We're just trying to understand property boundaries." "You're trespassing," I replied. There was silence. Then, "Linda says we're allowed." That was the moment I understood something important. Linda wasn't just bullying me. She was selling a story. Stress started showing up in Emily's charts before it showed up in her words. Her oncologist frowned at her blood pressure. White cell counts dipped. Sleep became shallow and broken. "This environment may not be as calm as we hoped," the doctor said gently. I nearly laughed. Calm had been stolen from us one tire track at a time. That night, Emily fell asleep early, exhausted from planting milkweed earlier that day. I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, laptop open, notebook beside it, doing what I'd done my entire career when something didn't feel right. I started documenting dates, times, vehicles, people, behavior. Within an hour, I saw it clearly. Every ranch tour happened one day before an HOA vote involving rural properties. Every single time. Linda wasn't sightseeing. She was campaigning. That's when I remembered something from overseas: you don't fight what you don't understand. You watch it. You record it. Then you act. The next morning, I drove into town and spent $900 I really couldn't afford. 6 trail cameras. Motion activated. Infrared. Long battery life. Emily watched me unpack them on the porch. "Are we doing something dangerous?" she asked. "No," I said. "We're doing something smart." I installed them like I was setting a perimeter in hostile territory. Overlapping angles. Hidden mounts. Fence posts. Tree limbs. One pointed directly at the gate Linda loved so much. I didn't confront her. I let her keep talking. The cameras paid for themselves in 3 days. On the third Tuesday, I caught Linda on video collecting cash. $50 bills. One by one. Smiling. Laughing. Promising authentic ranch access. She advertised it openly on the Cedar Ridge Facebook page. Texas Ranch Experience, limited spots. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. This wasn't just trespassing. This was commercial exploitation of my land. Illegal. Criminal. When Linda spotted one of the cameras the following week, she waved at it. "Can't stop me," she shouted. "This is my road." She smiled like someone daring the universe to correct her. I called my old Marine buddy Evan Brooks, who'd become a property attorney after retirement. He watched the footage in silence. "Jack," he finally said, "this is criminal trespass with commercial intent. But you'll need airtight proof. Financials. Advertising. Pattern. Can you help me build it?" I wouldn't miss this for the world. 2 weeks later, the real punch landed. A certified letter from the county planning office. Notice of easement claim hearing. Cedar Ridge Estates HOA vs. Holloway Ranch. Linda had filed for a historical right-of-way easement across my property. She'd gone legal. The fallout was immediate. My bank froze our equity line. Insurance started asking questions about commercial activity. Neighbors who'd known us for years suddenly sounded unsure when they spoke. "Jack, are you running tours out there?" one asked. Emily overheard that call. She cried quietly in the bedroom while I stared at the wall, fists clenched, realizing something else. Linda wasn't reacting. She was preempting. Which meant she knew she was vulnerable. The night before the hearing, Emily sat beside me at the table, planting late summer seeds in small paper cups. "You're very calm," she said. "I'm not," I replied. "I'm focused." The surveyor I hired was named Ray Dalton, a gray-bearded man who trusted satellites more than people. His equipment pinpointed our boundaries down to inches. "There's no easement here," he said flatly. Never was. But he found something else. The HOA's water line crossed 3 other ranches, illegally. I drove to see them all that afternoon. Carter. Alvarez. Monroe. Different stories. Same intimidation. Same threats. Linda had been doing this for 15 years. The hearing itself was almost anticlimactic. Linda showed up polished and confident. I showed up with a banker's box. When the planning director asked for documentation, she stalled. When I presented survey data and historical deeds, the room went quiet. The hearing was postponed. Outside, the director pulled me aside. Off the record, he said, document everything. She's connected. That night, Emily sat on the porch again for the first time in weeks. Monarchs drifted through her zinnias like orange sparks. Do you think she'll stop now? She asked. I shook my head. No. People like her don't retreat. They escalate. And I was right. 2 days later, Linda filed a nuisance complaint demanding daily fines of $500 until we modernized our ranch. Emily collapsed during chemo that Thursday. As I sat beside her hospital bed, listening to machines beep in the dark, I made a decision I should have made earlier. I was done reacting. I was done defending. From this point on, everything would be on my terms. Because if Linda Carver wanted a war, she'd picked the wrong engineer. And she had no idea what systems I was about to build. Hospitals have a smell you never forget. Bleach, plastic, fear, layered together until your brain associates it with helplessness. I sat in a stiff chair beside Emily's bed, watching clear liquid drip into her foreline, listening to machines keep rhythm for a body that had been fighting harder than any Marine I ever served with. And all I could think was this. Stress was killing her faster than cancer ever could. Linda Carver had crossed a line she could never step back over. By the time Emily was discharged the next afternoon, I already had a plan. Not an emotional one. Not a revenge fantasy. A process. The kind that works because it's boring, thorough, and devastating. That weekend, I practically moved into the county courthouse. Most people don't understand public records. They imagine dusty books and polite clerks. What they don't realize is that every land grab, every shady deal, every quiet shortcut leaves fingerprints, if you know how to look. I pulled deeds going back 50 years. Permit filings. Tax assessments. Infrastructure plans. Easement renewals. I photographed everything, cataloged it, cross-referenced dates like I was building an intelligence dossier. Military habit. And late Sunday night, surrounded by stacks of copied documents at my kitchen table, I found it. The original water easement Cedar Ridge relied on had expired in 1989. Expired. Not vague. Not disputed. Expired. The county had sent a renewal notice. Certified mail. Signature required. There was no response. For over a decade, the HOA had been operating illegally, assuming no one would ever challenge them. Then Linda Carver came along, smart, ambitious, ruthless, and instead of fixing the problem, she did something else. She forged the solution. I stared at the dates, the notary stamps, the county seals. They didn't line up. The seal design hadn't even existed at the time it was supposedly used. I felt that familiar cold clarity settle in, the same one I used to get before diagnosing a catastrophic system failure. This wasn't arrogance. This was fraud. I called Evan. He didn't speak for a full minute after I explained. Jack, he finally said, this isn't a civil dispute anymore. This is federal. That same week, something unexpected happened. My gate camera caught a figure at midnight. A man. Mid-50s. Careful. Measuring the posts. Taking photos. I recognized him immediately. Mark Carver. Linda's husband. The next morning, my phone rang. Mr. Holloway, he said quietly, we need to talk. We met at a diner just outside town, neutral ground. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. When he slid a folder across the table, his hands were shaking. These are the real documents, he said. And these are what Linda's been using. I flipped through the pages. Forged easements. Backdated signatures. Fake notarizations. Some of the people listed had been dead for years. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Because I filed for divorce yesterday, he said. And because I can't live with what she's done anymore. When I got home, Emily was planting bulbs for spring. She listened quietly as I told her everything. She's been lying to everyone, Emily said. Not angry. Just sad. For years. Yes, I said. And now she's scared. That's when I knew what would happen next. People like Linda don't stop when cornered. They double down. I filed reports everywhere. Sheriff's Department. District Attorney. State Attorney General. FBI Field Office. Every packet identical. Clean. Organized. Overwhelming. Forged documents. Financial estimates. Video evidence. Witness statements. A former federal prosecutor named Rachel Moreno took the case. She called me 2 days later. This is one of the cleanest fraud trails I've ever seen, she said. But we need her to make one more mistake. She didn't have to wait long. Linda's Facebook posts started getting erratic. Rants about rural extremists. Claims that I was holding the community's water hostage. Emergency HOA meetings. Panic dressed up as leadership. Then she made her announcement. A convoy. 15 vehicles. A peaceful demonstration to reclaim community access. Live streamed. I showed Emily the video. She's going to come through the gate, Emily said calmly. Yes, I said. She is. That night, I activated the final phase. The contractor arrived just after sunrise 2 days later. Steel. Concrete. Hydraulics. The bollards went in beneath the gravel drive, completely invisible when retracted. Pressure sensors calibrated. Warning signage posted. Permits filed. Legal. Documented. Precise. Emily watched from the porch as they tested the system. Is it dangerous? She asked. Only if someone ignores the warnings, I said. She smiled faintly. She will. Sunday night, the convoy plan went public. Linda stood in front of a crowd, phone held high, voice shaking with rehearsed outrage. Tomorrow, we take back what's ours. Federal agents watched the live stream from an unmarked vehicle down the road. Monday morning dawned clear and quiet. Emily insisted on sitting outside. I want to see it, she said. At 10:47 a.m., Linda Carver's white Lexus accelerated through my gate at 15 miles per hour. The sensors triggered. Hydraulics engaged. Steel rose. The sound was unforgettable, metal meeting inevitability. Her SUV didn't stand a chance. The impact destroyed the undercarriage instantly. Steam poured out. The horn locked on, screaming like a confession. Behind her, chaos. And then, calm. Rachel Moreno stepped forward with a warrant. Linda Carver, she said evenly, you are under arrest. The live stream kept rolling. Emily laughed, real laughter, full and free, for the first time in months. And as I watched federal agents secure the scene, I realized something profound. This wasn't revenge. This was resolution. Systems had failed. And systems had been corrected. The horn on Linda Carver's Lexus didn't stop screaming for nearly 10 minutes. It wailed across the pasture, sharp and desperate, like the vehicle itself couldn't believe what had just happened. Steam rolled out from under the hood, mixing with the morning air and the smell of crushed gravel. Transmission fluid bled into the road in a dark, spreading stain. Linda sat frozen behind the wheel. Her hands were locked at 10 and 2. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out at first, just disbelief. The kind that hits when a lie finally collides with reality at full speed. Behind her, the convoy unraveled. 15 vehicles had entered with confidence. None of them had a plan for what came next. Drivers reversed into one another. Doors flew open. People shouted over engines, phones held high, live streaming panic to an audience that was just beginning to understand they'd been lied to. And then the unmarked sedans rolled in. 3 of them. Quiet. Controlled. I recognized the posture immediately, federal. No wasted motion. No shouting. Emily squeezed my hand from her wheelchair on the porch. "Those aren't county," she said. "No," I replied. "They're not." Rachel Moreno stepped out first. Navy blazer. Badge clipped clean and visible. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Linda Carver," she said, clear enough for every camera, "step out of the vehicle." Linda snapped back to life. "This is illegal," she screamed, pounding the steering wheel. "You can't do this. I have documentation." Rachel didn't flinch. "Ma'am, your documentation consists of forged federal instruments." That sentence hit harder than the Bollards ever could. The live stream comments exploded. Confusion. Shock. Anger. Questions no one could ignore anymore. Forged. Federal. What does that mean? Linda tried to open the door. It jammed from the impact. She clawed at the handle like she could pry her way out of consequences. Behind her, one of the men she'd hired, the so-called security consultant, made a break for it. He bolted across my pasture, boots slipping in the grass. He didn't make it 20 yards. 2 agents tackled him right beside Emily's butterfly garden, wildflowers shaking as he went down. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Emily laughed again. Soft, breathless, but real. "Oh," she said, eyes shining. "That feels poetic." By noon, my ranch looked like a law enforcement trade show. Sheriff's cruisers. State police. FBI vehicles. A heavy-duty tow truck waiting for instructions. News vans lining the county road, antennas raised like metal grass. Neighbors arrived too. Ranchers on horseback. Veterans in pickup trucks. Even some Cedar Ridge residents, faces tight with confusion and dawning anger. Tom Carter was one of the first to reach me. "She told us you were holding the water hostage," he said quietly. I handed him a folder. "Read." He didn't say anything for a long time. When he looked up, his face had changed. "She lied to us." "Yes," I said. "For 15 years. Rachel gathered everyone within earshot and read the charges out loud. Every word landed like a hammer. Wire fraud. Mail fraud. Document forgery. Conspiracy. Obstruction of justice. Linda screamed through the broken windshield. I was protecting my community. Rachel leaned in slightly. "You were exploiting them." That was the moment the crowd turned. You could feel it, the shift. Anger redirected. Support draining away from Linda and flowing back to the people she'd manipulated. Someone in the crowd yelled, "Did we really pay for fake easements?" Another voice followed, louder. "You told us everything was legal." Linda didn't answer. She couldn't. The tow truck operator lowered the bollard so they could extract the Lexus. The damage underneath was total. Cracked transmission housing. Ruptured radiator. Bent frame. $75,000 of luxury reduced to scrap by $12,000 of preparation. As the vehicle was loaded onto the flatbed, I noticed the blessed license plate hanging crooked, scratched deep by steel. Emily leaned back in her chair, exhausted but smiling. "Do you think she ever saw this coming?" she asked. "No," I said. "People like her never do." Justice moved fast after that. Too fast for Linda to spin. Too fast for her lawyers to bluff. The evidence was airtight. Forged documents. Video confessions. Financial records. Testimony from her own husband. She pled guilty 3 months later. 4 years in federal prison. Full restitution. Asset seizure. Cedar Ridge's HOA dissolved within 2 weeks. Emergency elections installed new leadership who immediately reached out to every affected property owner. Legitimate easements were negotiated. Fair compensation paid. The class action lawsuit settled quietly but decisively. 200 families got their money back. Emily's medical bills, every last one, were covered by a combination of settlement funds and donations from veterans groups who'd followed the story. Her oncologist smiled at her charts the next visit. Whatever changed, he said, keep doing it. What changed was simple. The fear left. Spring came slowly that year. Emily's butterfly garden tripled in size. Monarch researchers from the State University asked permission to install observation stations. School groups visited, with permission this time. I started consulting part-time, helping other rural landowners fight HOA abuse the right way: documentation, patience, precision. We created a small legal defense fund for veterans and ranchers who couldn't afford to fight alone. Evan runs it now. Linda wrote me a letter from prison. She apologized. Asked for forgiveness. Emily read it carefully, then folded it neatly. I forgive her, she said. But forgiveness doesn't cancel consequences. She planted more milkweed that afternoon. The Bollards are still there. They've never needed to rise again. Word travels fast in rural Texas about which gates not to cross. Sometimes, in the evenings, Emily and I sit on the porch watching monarchs settle into the flowers she planted when everything felt fragile. This land stayed ours. Her sanctuary survived. And every time the wind moves through the pasture, I'm reminded of something the Corps taught me long ago. Strength isn't about force. It's about preparation. Because when systems fail, the solution isn't rage. It's engineering. The ranch got quiet again after the news trucks left. Not the nervous quiet we'd lived with for months, the kind that waits for engines in the distance, but a deep, honest quiet. Wind in the grass. Cattle lowing. The soft click of insects waking up at dusk. The kind of quiet that lets you breathe without checking the gate. Emily noticed it first. It sounds like home again, she said one evening, wrapped in a blanket on the porch, oxygen tank humming softly beside her chair. I knew exactly what she meant. For so long, the noise hadn't just been engines and horns. It had been paperwork. Threats. Rumors. That low, constant pressure that keeps your shoulders tight even when nothing is happening. When that pressure vanished, we both felt it, like stepping off a ship after months at sea and realizing the ground isn't moving anymore. The legal aftermath was almost boring. That's how you know it's real. No more dramatic hearings. No more surprise letters. Just filings, signatures, quiet negotiations handled by professionals who understood that this time, the rules actually mattered. The new HOA leadership came out to the ranch one afternoon. 3 of them. No clipboards. No cameras. Just respectful distance and honest faces. We owe you an apology, the new president said. And a thank you. They brought copies of properly drafted easement agreements. Fair compensation. Clear access routes that didn't come anywhere near Emily's garden or our home. For 15 years, the community had paid inflated fees for a lie. Now, everything was on paper. Transparent. Legal. That's how it should have been from the start. When they left, Emily reached down and brushed soil from her hands. Funny, she said. All that damage over something that could have been solved with a conversation. Some people don't know how to have those, I replied. The ranch rights legal defense fund started small. A few calls. A few emails. Stories that sounded painfully familiar. An elderly couple threatened over a fence line. A veteran being fined for non-compliant grass on land his family had owned for generations. A widow pressured into selling because she couldn't afford to fight an HOA with lawyers on retainer. I didn't need to convince Emily. "This is what you're supposed to do now," she said simply. So I did. I didn't become a crusader. I didn't chase headlines. I just helped people understand their options, their documents, their leverage. Same thing I'd done my whole career: identify the system, find the failure point, apply pressure where it actually matters. Turns out there are a lot of Lindis out there. And a lot of people who think they have no choice. Emily's health improved slowly, then steadily. Her doctors called it remission. We called it peace. With the stress gone, her appetite returned. Her sleep deepened. She spent longer hours in the garden, sitting among the flowers, monarchs landing on her hands like they recognized her. One evening, as the sun dipped low and turned the pasture gold, she leaned her head against my shoulder. "You know," she said, "I used to think strength meant enduring whatever came at you. And now?" I asked. "Now I think it means knowing when to stand your ground." I kissed the top of her head and watched a monarch lift off into the fading light. I keep Linda's letter in a drawer. Not because I reread it, but because it reminds me of something important. Villains don't usually think they're villains. They think they're necessary. Justified. Smarter than everyone else. Until the system they've been gaming finally stops bending. I don't hate her. I don't think about her much at all anymore. Prison has a way of shrinking people down to their true size. The Bollards still sit beneath the gravel drive. Most visitors don't even know they're there. But every once in a while, someone asks about them, usually another landowner, voice low, eyes tired. Do they really work? I smile. They work when everything else has failed. What I don't say, but what they always understand, is this. The Bollards weren't about stopping a car. They were about drawing a line. On the anniversary of the arrest, Emily and I hosted a small gathering. Nothing formal. Just neighbors, friends, and a few folks who'd been helped by the fund. Kids ran through the pasture. Someone grilled burgers. Monarchs drifted lazily through the air like confetti. At sunset, Emily stood up, no wheelchair that day, and raised a glass. "To land," she said. "To truth. And to not backing down when it matters." Everyone cheered. I didn't say anything. I just looked around at the place we'd fought for and thought about how close we'd come to losing it, not to fire or flood or disease, but to paper and arrogance. That's what almost took it from us. Paper and arrogance. Sometimes, late at night, I walk down to the gate. I stand where Linda's Lexus met steel and inevitability. The gravel has been replaced. The scars are gone. But I remember the sound. Not the crash. The silence afterward. The moment when the life finally had nowhere left to go. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't protect what you love by being loud. You protect it by being ready. And if someone ever mistakes your quiet for weakness, well, that's on them. What never made the headlines were the quiet victories. No camera ever showed the elderly rancher 2 counties over who called me at midnight, voice shaking, because an HOA lawyer had told him his grandfather's fence was non-compliant and needed to be removed within 10 days. No reporter stayed long enough to film the look on a widow's face when she realized the lien on her property was illegal and she didn't have to sell the land her husband was buried on. And no article ever mentioned the dozens of people who came to my kitchen table over the next year, spreading documents across the wood like confessions, asking the same question every time. Do I actually have a choice? Most of them had already decided the answer was no. That's what people like Linda Carver rely on, not force, not even authority, but assumption. The belief that resistance is too expensive, too complicated, too risky. Fear is cheaper than law. I started keeping a second notebook. The first one had been about Linda, dates, times, patterns, evidence. This one was different. Names. Counties. HOA bylaws highlighted in red. Counties that rubber-stamped everything. Judges who didn't. I wasn't building a case anymore. I was building a map. And once you see the map, you realize how widespread the problem really is. HOAs aren't evil by default. Most are boring. Necessary. Invisible. But the dangerous ones all look the same. Long-serving presidents. No audits. Vague language. Emergency powers. Legal counsel paid monthly regardless of need. Boards that discourage written communication. Patterns. Always patterns. Emily worried about me at first. "Promise me you won't turn this into another war," she said one night as we sat on the porch, cicadas buzzing in the dark. "I won't," I told her. "Wars are emotional. This is maintenance." She laughed softly. "You always did prefer fixing things to fighting." That was true. I never liked chaos. I liked order. Systems that worked because they were designed to. The difference now was that the system I was working on involved people, frightened, stubborn, hopeful people who had been told for years to sit down and be quiet. Teaching them to stand up didn't require shouting. It required receipts. The legal defense fund grew faster than we expected. Veterans groups shared it. Rural co-ops donated quietly. A retired judge mailed a check with a handwritten note that simply said, "About time." Evan insisted on structure, bylaws, oversight, rotating board seats. "No Lindis," he said flatly. We both agreed. Every dollar was tracked. Every case documented. Transparency wasn't a slogan anymore, it was armor. Emily helped too, in her own way. She wrote letters. Long, patient ones. To people who felt overwhelmed or embarrassed or ashamed that they hadn't fought sooner. She never judged. She understood better than anyone what it felt like to be tired. Every so often, someone would ask about Linda. "Do you think she's sorry? Do you think she learned anything?" I always gave the same answer. I think prison teaches clarity. What someone does with that clarity is up to them. Emily said it better once. "Consequences don't exist to teach lessons," she said, hands deep in soil. "They exist to stop harm." She was right. Linda's absence did more good than any apology ever could. One afternoon, nearly 2 years after everything ended, a black SUV pulled up slowly outside our gate. I felt the old instinct kick in before I consciously noticed it, posture tightening, awareness sharpening. But the Bollards stayed down. A man stepped out. Mid-30s. Suit, but worn like armor he wasn't comfortable in. "I'm with the state," he said, showing ID. "We're reviewing HOA oversight policies. Your case keeps coming up." I nodded. "They always do." He looked past me, toward the pasture, the garden, Emily laughing with a neighbor near the flowers. "You know," he said, "your situation changed how a lot of counties handle easements now." I hadn't known that. He hesitated before adding, "You cost some people a lot of power." I smiled. "Power that fragile deserves to be lost."